In 2010, a U.S. Border Patrol agent, Brian Terry, was murdered by a Mexican cartel. At the scene of the crime, the United States found a multitude of guns, several of which were directly traced back to sales from the U.S. government. Over the next few years, there would be a serious investigation into federal agencies and the Obama administration, which culminated in the following uncomfortable truth. The United States of America, in an effort to bring cartel members and gun traffickers to justice, had provided firepower to cartels that would go on to murder countless numbers of Mexicans within Mexico, as well as Brian Terry. This Fast and Furious scandal has almost all been forgotten about today. Mainstream media, such as Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon from CNN, claim that the biggest scandal of the Obama administration was his tan suit. The reporting is not the focus of today's video, however. The reporting is merely emblematic of the larger issue of a lack of public awareness surrounding the gun trafficking issue. The erasure of this event from the memory of many Americans is a perfect illustration for the general lack of public knowledge surrounding the gun trafficking issue across the U.S.-Mexico border. Guns trafficking is purely and simply weapons being sold in an illegal secondary market. It is important to note that while the drug trade flows north from Latin America to the United States, the flow of weapons is the complete inverse. Americans spend roughly $6.6 billion annually on illegal drugs, the largest market for illegal drugs on the planet. In order to fulfill this market demand, cartels compete for territory to secure the most efficient transportation routes to move these drugs up through Latin America and into the United States. As a result, these cartels need weapons to enforce their territory. Perfect for the cartels and unfortunate for everyone else, the largest gun manufacturer on the planet exists just a few miles north and has relatively relaxed gun laws based on global standards. The result is a massive scale gun trafficking epidemic. To illustrate the scale of the problem, from 2006 to the start of 2009, Mexican authorities captured just over 38,000 weapons from cartels, of which 23,000 were rifles, particularly assault rifles, 3,000 grenades and cartridges, and millions of rounds of ammunition. Of these weapons, they were able to trace 12% of them, and of these traced weapons, 87% were directly linked to sales within the United States. Most of these weapons came from border regions within the United States, with 39% coming from stores in Texas, 20% from California, 10% from Arizona, and the rest from all the other states. Despite the best efforts to obtain more information, the U.S. government has admitted that it's impossible to accurately know how many weapons are being smuggled into Mexico in a given year. There is also significant conflict between agencies in the Mexican government and the United States government over the data, with each side trying to blame the other. Part of the reason for the conflict is the cultural and legal differences between the two countries. In Mexico, there's only one location to purchase guns from. This is a government-sanctioned facility, and there's a national firearm registry, as well as firm restrictions on caliber and type of weapon. Article 10 of the Mexican Constitution gives the people of the United Mexican States the right to possess weapons in their homes for their security and legitimate defense, with the exception of those prohibited by federal law and those reserved for the military. Federal law will determine the cases, conditions, and requirements and places to which carrying of firearms will be authorized. Article 11 of the law lists weapons for exclusive use by the armed forces. Article 84 establishes prison sentences ranging from 5 to 30 years for anyone who clandestinely introduces into the country weapons, ammunition, explosives, and materials reserved for use by the military. In contrast, the United States has between 55,000 and 100,000 locations to buy weapons, which between 6,500 and 12,000 of them are in border zones. There are very light regulations to prevent individuals from purchasing weapons, and these regulations vary state by state. Additionally, criminal sentencing is incredibly relaxed, and the punishments for trafficking are extremely low. In fact, there's not even a federal law prohibiting gun trafficking, although they exist at state levels. The majority of individuals caught in gun trafficking in the United States end up serving time for other crimes, such as lying on a federal form, because it is so difficult to prosecute individuals under the current law. In fact, under Section 922 of federal law, they restrict weapon and ammunition sales to only those with a government license, but the only people who need licenses are licensed importers. Licensed importers is a very technical definition that actually excludes people that want to just sell off individual weapons that they own. Thus, many people in the United States become straw purchasers, which are people that purchase guns legally just to sell them to someone else, and then pass them along to a secondary market of illegal weapons. The overall system is known as an ant network, where there are tons of individual players crossing the border at a small scale to make a gigantic problem. Cartels will often use anywhere from 4 to 6 middlemen to transport arms internationally to make them that much harder to track, and also to make them that much harder to prosecute. Beyond these legal reasons, Americans, or at least a significant number of them, place enormous cultural value on owning weapons. There are over 393 million weapons in circulation in the United States, while there are an estimated 1.7 million in Mexico. Despite being legal in Mexico, the majority of citizens elect to not purchase personal firearms. However, these 1.7 million weapons are used to commit more murders than the 393 million in the United States. In 2017, the Mexican homicide rate was 24.8 deaths per 100,000, whereas it is only 5.3 per 100,000 in the United States. Of these murders in Mexico, a significant portion are from the cartels, and thus being fueled in some respect by American weapons. Most Americans simply think of the murder issue in Mexico as a domestic one, and a problem with the government, which it unquestionably partially is. But it is also an international one, for the Mexican government is being physically outgunned by American weapons in the hands of these cartels. International solutions have been extremely ineffective at curbing the problem thus far. One of the major reasons is that many of the solutions proposed infringe on private citizens' rights to own and use weapons that are currently legal. For example, the Organization of American States held a conference titled Inter-American Convention Against the Illicit Manufacturing of and Trafficking in Firearms, Ammunition, Explosives, and Other Related Materials, and it was applied in 1997. This agreement would aim to mark firearms to enable tracing, criminalize the illicit manufacture of and trafficking in firearms, manage these firearms, ensure proper licensing, strengthen controls at points of export, and establish other security measures. The Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, describes the proposal as incompatible with American liberties, citing that it would criminalize the actions of millions of Americans. The resistance worked, though. The United States never ratified the agreement, despite support from many groups such as the International Drug Policy Consortium. Beyond legislative attempts, ICE works directly with the Office of the Mexican Attorney General to prosecute arms traffickers, and the U.S. Department of Defense provides training and weaponry to Mexico upon request under Project Gunrunner. More generally, the United States government has admitted to complicity in the problem and shares information with the Mexican government. The issue is far from being solved. The key takeaway should be that Americans are complicit in Mexico's issues despite their domestic appearance. America cannot essentially fund the cartels through narcotics purchasing and stand by the wayside as the cartels amass gunpowder to successfully fight the Mexican government and their institutions. America should look at the international implications of their own domestic policy, especially in regards to the closest neighbors. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. As always, sources in the description, and I'm out.